Hi folks, Dave, the Honest Audiophile. This is the Meze Liric 2, and these are my Honest Audiophile impressions. I want to thank Meze Audio for providing the Lyric 2 for a review. To greatly appreciate it. Meze Audio, you rock. Alright, so the Lyric 2, this will set you back $2,000 from your bank account. It is a closed-back planar headphone. It has a Rhinero isodynamic hybrid array MZ4, 61 ohms of impedance, 100 decibels of sensitivity, and a frequency response range of 4 Hz to 92 kilohertz. It weighs 427 grams. The Meze Liric 2, it comes in this white box that you see back here. Taking off that sleeve, and you're greeted by this huge display case that has like a leather top to it. Opening it up, and you get the carrying case. Let's set that to the side. Now the carrying case is very nice. It's black, and you have Meze logo. It's a hard shell. You do have a little loop so you can carry it around and attach it to things. Opening it up, and there's just a bed for your headphones to sit in, like that, and then your accessories can sit on the inside. Speaking of the accessories, you get a little carrying bag for your cables, and then you also get a couple of adapters. You get one of those airplane adapters and a 1/4 inch adapter. And you get 2 cables. You get a cable that is shorter, probably about 4 foot long, and it has a very nice build to it. Very large Meze branded split. Terminates into a 4.4. And then you have your 3.5 inputs for the headphones, and they are red and blue for right and left. Or sorry, yeah, red and blue. Then you have a rubber cable, which is a lot thinner and a lot longer. This is about 10 foot long, and it never really straightened out. It's just kind of rubbery, a little bit on the more scriggly side. Terminates into a 3.5, and then of course you have your left and rights for your headphones. Now if this is to be the portable cable, this is way too long at 10 foot long, and it's just a pain if you're connecting it to a portable device, because then you have to wad up the cable to keep it in your, keep it out of the way so you don't trip on it while you're walking around town. Alright, so let's get back to the headphones. So the Lyric 2, it's a very, very pretty looking headphone with the wood cups. If you remember, the originals had an all black cup, and these wood ones are just really, really cool. Now they're extremely dark wood, so it might be kind of hard to see on camera how pretty they actually are. And then you have the usual Meze yoke system with the slider, and then you have this very nice thick leather headband. It says Lyric on top, and then there's some padding on the inside underneath, and even though it's not the thickest of padding, it's still extremely comfortable and does a good job of dispersing the headphone weight of 427 grams. The cups swivel all the way around, and they also have a little bit of wiggle, and they always return to back to that position. Down here on the bottom, you have your 3.5 inputs for your cables. And when you have your cables in, the Lyric 2 kind of pushes the cables out towards the front of you so that they're away from your shoulders. And this cable does not make up any noise when you wiggle it. It's a very, very nice quality cable. I did find that that rubber cable, the really long one, did make a little bit of noise when it was moving around. The Lyric 2 is very comfortable to wear. I do find that the cups are slightly small, and I do feel them on the bottom of my earlobes. And if I push up on the rods a little bit more to move the middle of the cup down, then the cup is hanging down here on my jawline and it becomes uncomfortable. So it's a little bit odd of a fit, and I do wish that the cups were slightly bigger, especially down on the bottom part. But overall, I find them to be extremely comfortable. Now, the headband does a good job of dispersing the weight, but because of the position that you have to put it, it kind of leans forward and puts a little bit of pressure towards the front of the headband, and it can get a little fatiguing after a while. I find about an hour and a half to 2 hours is about as long as I can wear the Lyric 2 before it starts becoming uncomfortable. The Lyric 2 also does a good job with isolation of outside noises. It's probably about 66% of outside noises being blocked. It's going to muffle a lot of louder noises, but it's not going to completely seal you away from all outside noises. Louder things like vacuum cleaners and coffee grinders, you definitely can hear them, but they are muffled. Louder vehicles you can hear as well. Carrying on a conversation is a little bit of a struggle, but you can do it as long as you pause your music. I found that the Meze Liric 2 is fairly easy to drive. All portable devices did drive the Lyric 2. I had no issues using dongles, DAPs, or desktop. The Lyric 2, though, is picky when it comes to a source, and it didn't really matter whether it was something that was cold, analytical sounding, or warm sounding. It was just fussy no matter what. I liked it on some sources that were a little bit more neutral, analytical leaning, like the FIO K11, it sounded very good. But on the Mytek Liberty DAC 2, it didn't really sound very good at times, and it had some hollowness and tinniness to it, and it was a little bit shrill at times. Moving over to like the Audeze S9C Pro, and it was fairly nice and pleasant to listen to, but then some songs came out and it was just a little bit too dark. Going over on the Creative X5, and it just didn't sound good on anything. The FIO K9 was kind of like the Audeze S9C Pro experience. It was kind of hit or miss with the songs. Some songs were very enjoyable, and then others I was just not very well pleased. Using it with the Audeze Deckard, it was pretty happy all the time. Using it on the Audeze X1S GT wasn't very pleasant. It didn't sound very good, and it just wasn't really engaging with me. And so it was just kind of picky no matter what the source was. And I just found that kind of strange. So just keep that in mind, that the Meze Liric 2 is very, very source picky. So how do the Meze Liric 2 sound? And the Meze Liric 2 has a pleasant bass. It actually has decent extension into the sub bass, and you get some rumble and grumble, and there's a little there. There's a nice mid bass punch and slam and a little bit of kick, and decent texture to it, and the upper bass is well controlled. Overall, the tonality of the bass is pleasant and it's engaging, and it has a naturalish tone and timbre. Decent details and resolution, and for the most part, it's a toe tapping, engaging type of bass. I really did enjoy it. It has nice note weight, and overall, the bass would help me to be involved or engaged with the music, and I would enjoy those bassy tracks. And then at times when a song wasn't as bassy, it stayed well controlled and was just enjoyable and came alive when called upon. The mids. The mids are somewhat uneven and uncohesive. The lower mids are somewhat recessed and a little bit on the thinner side when it comes to note weight. The upper mids are elevated and there's this kind of hole between about 1K to about 3K where there's not enough body and it sounds really thin. And then from about 3K to about 6K, it's elevated a little too much and things become a little bit unnatural sounding. And so instruments, as you go through the octaves, will sound a little bit thin and recessed in the lower mids, and then they're a little bit thin and a little bit more forward. And then as you get into the upper mids, after about 3K, they become extremely forward and aggressive and somewhat thinner note weight, and they have a lot of energy and sparkle. And so the mids are uneven, they're not really that cohesive, and they just don't always sound pleasurable. But you put them on certain sources and the mids even out a little bit and you get a little bit more body and they sound pleasurable. So it's kind of a hit or miss depending on what source you use. The treble. The treble is way too energetic. It's very, very elevated and it has a lot of sparkle and it has a lot of just energy and it's somewhat aggressive, and at times it can come across as shrill. The treble has some hotness to it and it will bite you, and it will bite you in a fatiguing way. There is a lot of energy there. And the tonality of it is not the most natural. I find that the tone and timbre of the treble is not very natural, and instruments at times can sound somewhat glassy. The extension in the treble is nice. There's good amount of air and space, and overall the treble is just too much. It just has too much energy in my opinion, and it becomes fatiguing very quickly no matter what the track. The sound stage of the Lyric 2 is unique. So the sound stage is wide, especially for a closeback, but unfortunately it kind of sounds unnatural and artificial in its width. It sounds like it's trying too hard to be wide, and so it stretches things out and they just become a little bit artificial sounding. The width is nice, the depth is good. You can look into a stage and you can go, that's front row, second row, third row, and there's good layering. It gets a little confused on busier tracks at times, but for the most part, it's a pretty well controlled layering headphone, and the depth of it is nice. Overall, the stage is wide and deep, and it has a nice height to it, but at the same time it just doesn't sound natural. It sounds kind of artificial and a little bit fake because it's trying too hard. Imaging is good. Things flow across the stage very well and you can pinpoint and place them. It does a good job with being pretty close to precision. It's right here. It's a very, very small neighborhood, and you can follow things as they move across the stage. You can also place things in front and behind, and overall it's just a very engaging stage with its placement. Detail retrieval of the Lyric 2 is pretty good. You're not going to miss anything, but at the same time it's not going to wow you for its $2,000 price point. I find that the Lyric 2 is adequate when it comes to detail retrieval. Resolution is kind of disappointing for its price point. Especially in the upper treble regions, it becomes a little bit glassy and a little bit glary, and at times it can be shrill, and the resolution is not as good in the treble as it is more in the mids and in the bass. Tone and timbre. The tone and timbre of the Lyric 2 is kind of hit or miss. I find that the tone and timbre in the bass is good. It sounds very natural, very accurate, and it has nice note weight, and you can differentiate between the instruments and the vocalist down in the bass regions. As you get into the mids though, especially in the upper mids, when you start getting around 1K to 3K, things get a little bit thin and they don't have as much note weight, and it becomes a little bit harder to differentiate what instruments are playing, and the timbre becomes a little bit off. As you go 3K and higher in the mids, it becomes more elevated, and that throws off the timbre slightly, and they become a little bit unnatural sounding. So I find that the mids struggle the most with the tone and timbre, along with the treble, which is elevated too much, and it makes instruments sound a little bit shrill. So the Meze Liric 2. How does it compare to a couple other headphones? So I don't have any headphones that are in the $2,000 price point right now that are closebacks, but I do have a couple of other closebacks that I listen to on a regular basis. And the first one is the Austrian Audio Hi-X60. Now the Hi-X60 is way cheaper than the Lyric, but in my opinion, the Hi-X60 is more cohesive. It's more neutral sounding, and even though it does have a little bit lighter note weight to it, it is a more natural sounding tone, and also it does better with accurate timbre. I find that the Hi-X60 is more of a stage monitor, and so it's not as pleasurable to listen to for long listening sessions, but it is more of a neutral monitor and does better in that regard. Now the Lyric 2 is going to have better detail retrieval, but believe it or not, the Hi-X60 is pretty close to it when it comes to resolution, especially in the treble. Even though the Lyric 2 technically is the better headphone, I find that the Hi-X60 I would prefer to listen to, because the mids just sound more accurate and true. Next, we have the Audeze LCD2 Closed. Now, the Audeze LCD2 Closed is definitely a lot heavier. It's very well built. I think it looks rather nice. It's comfortable-ish for its heaviness, and I find that the LCD2 Closed beats the Lyric 2 when it comes to listenability. The LCD2 Closed has more note weight. It sounds fuller. It sounds more natural, especially in the mids. There's note weight, and there's not that recession and dip, especially between 1 and 3K, and there's not that super elevation after 3K. I find that the treble of the Audeze LCD2 Closed is more tame. It's not as energetic as the Lyric 2, but it's more pleasurable. Now the Lyric 2 has more air and space, and it extends farther out, but I find that the LCD2 Closed is more controlled. Throughout the bass, the mids, and the treble, the LCD2 Closed just sounds more natural and accurate. It also is slightly more neutral. Soundstage wise, the LCD2 Closed sounds more natural. It doesn't have that artificialness trying to stretch it and sound bigger than it is, because it's a closeback. As far as imaging, the LCD2 Closed is more precise in its placement. Depth and layering are pretty close to each other. And then when it comes to tone and timbre, the LCD2 Closed is just more natural sounding. And the Audeze LCD2 Closed has about the same amount of detail retrieval as the Lyric 2, and I think it resolves better. It's not as glassy and glary, especially in the treble. So, the Meze Liric 2. $2,000. It's a pretty looking headphone, and at times I really love it, and then at other times I don't love it at all. And as much as I love Meze products, the Lyric 2 kind of disappoints me. It just doesn't connect with me, and it's trying too hard, and it's pushing things too much in the uppers, and it just is fatiguing to me. And I really like the look of it, and I wish it sounded as good as it looks. It's been Dave, the Honest Audiophile. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video. Speaking of next videos, somewhere on the screen, subscription links and notification bells. If you haven't already, check those off. And then don't forget to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down to the video. Check out all the links down below. There's all kinds of information down there regarding how you can contact channel, follow channel, support channel. All that kind of stuff is listed down below. Speaking of supporting the channel, I want to thank my supporters through Patreon and YouTube memberships. Thank you very much for all that you provide to the channel. It's much appreciated. If you're interested in supporting the channel, there's all kinds of ways that you can do that. One-time gifts with PayPal, Venmo, YouTube, or you can support me monthly through Patreon and YouTube memberships, where you will get access to videos early, like the video that you're watching right now, the Lyric 2, or you can get access to my Discord server if you choose to ask me. And that Discord server is private, and we can carry on all kinds of conversations there, and there's all kinds of great people in there that can answer your questions and all that kind of stuff. So if you're interested in all that, check out the links down below. Also down there's gear recommendations, music recommendations, and there's also other things, all sorts of stuff like gear rankings and all sorts of stuff. So check out the links down below. And lastly, don't forget to enjoy the music, and that honesty is the best policy.